What is going on, guys? It's Amazing Arrow here. I thought I'd bring you a setup video regards everything that I use for certain racetracks. I have had a lot of people come forth and ask me, what setups do you run here, or what do you use there? So I thought I'd make a video just explaining it in a bit more detail. I will be showing all tracks. I'm not going to go into a super kind of analysis, but just give you guys a brief rundown of what I use at every racetrack. So we'll go through them all now. Australia, I'll probably run 3.7. I'd probably bump that up to 100 and probably 65, so 65 100 on the differential. Suspension geometry, fairly stock standard for every racetrack. I think everyone knows that. Suspension 2.2, 5.5 and 3.5. I find it works pretty well. In terms of a race setup, I like to have that at about 90 and have that probably at about 57. That's my own personal preference, obviously. It could be different for you guys, I don't know. Tyres, Australia, I really run, that's what I run really at every racetrack. And I'll run 8 as well, because with the 3.7, I just think 9's just too much. So that's my rundown of Australia setup. If you want to pause the video and have a look at that, please do. Anyway, let's move on to round number 2, Bahrain. As you can see, I've got them all based on time trial setups. In the race, I normally run with about 1.6.8 ballast, or 1.6 wings. Transmission, in the race I actually swap that around. So I'll just swap the two over, so 72 100 instead of 100 72. Suspension geometry, again, stock standard. 2.3 for front and rear suspension, 5.3 for the anti-roll bars, and 3.4 for ride height. In terms of the race, again, I've probably run about 90 and 55 really. The only corner I find is that tricky left-handed downhill section coming into the back straight. I find that a little bit tricky with 55, but if you can manage it, it works well. And again, 23 and 21.1, really what I run at every racetrack. 8 ballast as said prior. Again, you want to pause the video and run through and try it out for yourself. And move on to China. China, it's a bit of a weird one for me, honestly. I've never really done massively well at the racetrack. I don't know, it seems like I can nail a lap, but consistency is what hurts me around China myself. But anyway, back to the video. Look, if I'm honest, I'll probably run about 3.6. I dangle back and forth between 7 and 8. Depends, really. Tyres, that's just stock standard for every racetrack. I don't need to run through that. Braking, I've probably actually run about 95 and 54 at China. That's my personal preference. Again, suspension, 3.4 for front and rear suspension. Anti-roll bars, I'll leave them alone, 6.6. Front ride height at 3, rear ride height at 5. Suspension geometry, again, stock standard. Transmission, differential, exactly the same as Bahrain, 72 100. Just swap them over from where they were. Where to now? Azerbaijan. 1.4 wings I find works well. It's what I use in time trial, and I find it works fairly well in the race as well. Again, the same as China. Swap them around. So instead of 172, you go 72 100. Suspension geometry, again, bang, stock standard. Suspension, a little bit different. Front and rear suspension both down at 1. Front and rear anti-roll bars at 2 for the front and 3 for the rear. Front ride height is at 1, rear at 2. Brakes, again, personal preference. Probably about 56, I'd say, at Azerbaijan in terms of brake bias, 95% brake pressure. Tyres, again, stock standard. You can go 21.5 or 0.1. I don't find it makes much of a difference. 8 ballast. I've tried to run with 9, and it's just too taily. I can't catch it. I lose lap speed, so I feel like 1, 4 and 8 is a good setup myself. Again, personal preference, but entirely up to you guys. Anyway, to Catalunya. Now for a long time, this track really was very irritating because I could not look after the tyre temperatures. No matter what I did, they would just, within 3-4 laps, whether I was trying to drive conservative or flat out, the tyres would just be absolutely gone. So now, I probably run something a bit different. I run 4.8 probably, again 8 ballast. 3-4, that's what I normally run. I normally run 4, sometimes I dangle it down 3. Differential, stock standard. Suspension geometry, a bit different. 320 and 150 for the front and rear camber. Front toe, all the way to the left, as you can see, like normal. Suspension, 5.5, front and rear suspension. Front anti-roll bar all the way up to 11, the rear at 9. Front ride height is set at 3 and the rear at 4. Brakes, again, I'd probably just bump brake bias up to 54, maybe 55. Personal preferences though again. Tyre temperatures. Oh man, until this update came out, I loathed the tyre temperatures on this game. I hated them. But now, if I actually try and drive conservative, the tyres will actually last, so I play the game a bit more often. Again, I bump them down to, well, stock standard, what I normally run. Sometimes I run a bit lower, depending on the longevity of the race. So again, 4.8 wings, 8 ballast. Now to where I just raced the other day. There's a video on that up on my channel as well. Go check that out if you guys haven't already. Monaco, which is oddly enough where we are. My race setup is usually about 7-11. I bump that up to 100, so 60 and 100 on the differential. Suspension geometry, bog standard, nothing different. 7.6 for suspension, 7.5 for anti-roll bars, and 5.6 for ride height. Brakes, bump that down to 95 and probably have front brake bias at about 53. This is a race setup though, keep in mind. 23, 21.1 for pressures, and weight distribution I will bump that back down to 8, because with 9 I just, again, like China and Australia and everything, it's too taily, for my liking anyway. Canada, a track that I always do fairly well at. I like the flow of the circuit. 1.7 for wings. I find differential, I normally either run 70 or 90. Suspension geometry, bog standard still. 2.2 for suspension, 11.11 for the anti-roll bars, and 4.5 for front ride height. Brakes, I actually pretty much leave alone. Yeah, nothing really changes. Take a little bit of brake pressure off and just bump it up to 54. Tyres, same as usual. And 8 ballast, and I find that is a really good race setup for myself around Canada. Now off to France. Now this is a race setup because I've used it and I saved it a couple of weeks ago. So 1.9 wings, 70-100 for the differential. Same old for the suspension geometry. Suspension 3.3 for suspension, front and rear. Front and rear anti-roll bar both set at 9. Front ride height set at 2 and the rear at 4. Brakes 95 and 54. I find works really well. Tyres 23 on the front. I lowered it a little bit on the rear just to keep the rears in check. 20.7, you can get away with running 21.1, I think. That's just me. And again, I leave the ballast set at 9 because with 1.9, you know, I feel like it just rotates the car a bit nicer. Austria. Well, it's a fast-flowing racetrack, that's for sure. It's very hard to get right, but when you do, it feels very rewarding. Anyway, run you guys through some more setups. 1.9 wings for aero. I went back and forth whether what to do to keep that at 60 or bump it up to 100. I find bumping it up to 100, so 70-100 works best for me. But again, I am playing this on a controller. I am not on a wheel. So the wheel could have a completely different feel to it. I'm not sure. But again, this is all personal preference. It might not work for you guys. If it does, you're welcome. If not, well, yeah, it didn't help. Anyway, suspension geometry, again, standard, everyone knows. Front suspension set at 2, rear suspension at 1, front anti-roll bar at 3, the rear at 2, front ride height at 3, and rear at 5. Brakes, I find 155 front brake bias, works really well. You can bump the front tyres up to 23, 21.1, I think that works well. And you want to bump it down to 9 ballast. Even though it's running 1.9 wings, I find 10 ballast is too much, I really do. Anyway, off to Germany. Now, you can get away with 1.9 wings and 9 ballast again, but you've got to be so careful through the first corner. That right hand, I'd almost even call it a kink almost. But it is so easy to track extend. With the back end loose, you really got to be careful. So you could probably run it, but it's loose. So you really want to practice and get some laps under your belt. Again, that's just what I think. 8100 for the differential. Suspension, a little bit different actually. Yeah, stock standard front camber, rear camber set at 120. 0.07 for front toe and 0.47 for the rear. Front suspension at 4, rear at 3. Front and rear anti-roll bar both set at 3. The front ride height also at 3 and the rear at 5. Brake pressure, now this is a bit different. 89-90 I find works well. I probably said that 54-55. Again, personal preference. I find that's a pretty good setup in terms of tyre temperatures. I think it works well. And again, like 1.9 wings, 9 ballast. If you can make it work, then you'll be pretty speedy. But again, it's personal preference. And that was not Germany, that was Britain, so my apologies. But it's pretty much the same really. Now we're at Germany, but 1.9, I think, you know, you can still get away with it. So, anyway, backtrack to Britain for a moment. That's a race setup at Silverstone. I do find that works really well. That makes me look really stupid thinking that was Germany. Why did I think that was Germany? I don't know. But anyway. So that was the setup for the British Grand Prix. Now we are on Silverstone. Right. See if we can get back on track here. 1.9 wings again. 60-60. I'll probably bump that up to 60 and 100. I just find having 100 I just get better drive traction as long as I can look after the rear tyres. Bog standard again, Germany this time. Front suspension and rear set at 2.2. Anti-roll bars at 8.8. Front ride height at 2, rear at 5. Brakes 152. Probably bump that up to 55 again, like Britain and most other tracks. Tyre temperatures bog standard and weight distribution ballast set at 9. Hungary. A interesting racetrack, to say the least. I actually tend to really run with just 7 ballast through here. Stock tyre pressures again, about 54 in terms of brake bias, as you can see 87 brake pressure. 4.4 for suspension, 10.7 for the anti-roll bars, and 2.3 for ride height. Suspension geometry, bog standard, 50-100 I find works well, and I run with 9.11. Anyway, off to Spa-Francorchamps at Belgium. Again, you can run with 9. I find that Taylor, what I actually do is I run with about 1.5 and 8 ballast. 60-80 I actually find works well at Spa. I actually think that works pretty well. Suspension geometry, bog standard, apart from the rear toe, that at 0.38. Suspension, 2.2 for front and rear suspension. Both anti-roll bars set at 2, front ride height at 3, the rear at 4. 95 brake pressure, 54 brake bias, again fairly stock standard. Tyre pressures. These are tyre pressures I actually run in time trial. Again, I have actually raced with these. You can get away with it. If you wanted to play it safe, you could just bump them back down to what, you know, you would ever usually run. And again, just 8 ballast. I find that's my setup around here. Keep in mind, these are all race setups, guys. I'm showing you. This isn't a setup for qualifying. This is a setup for the long distance 25-50% races. Yeah, where are we now? We're at Italy. 1.4 wings, I find works pretty well. I swapped them over again like I did at Backhill and some other tracks, 80 and 100. Suspension geometry, bog standard again. Suspension 1-1, 11-11, 5-5. Brakes 87 and 53. I run 54 myself. 23 and 21.1. And weight distribution, I have that set at 8. Because I find with 9 it's just a bit too oversteery for my liking. Singapore. A different racetrack to say the least. What I usually do is I rumble about 8 or 9 for aerodynamics. Differential 50-100, I find that works well. Suspension geometry, just that's a formality nearly at this point. 3-3 for suspension, 11-8 for anti-roll bars, and 3-4 for ride height. Brakes 82-52, I run that about 54. Tyre temperatures, what I always run. Ballast at 8. Off to Russia. I normally run with about 1.6 and 8 ballast. 50-80 I find works fairly well for differential. Suspension geometry, bog standard again. Suspension 5-5, 11-4 and 3-3. 100%, I probably run at about 56. I find it stops pretty well. You do have to be a little bit cautious when you're pulling it up, but as long as you don't, jam on the brakes and just deliberately try to lock it up, you can get away pretty smooth, and I find you can gain a couple of tenths out of it. Tyre temperatures, bog standard again, and as previously said, 8 ballast. Off to Japan, almost at the end already. Now, I debuted in Apex Online Racing at this racetrack, and I probably went a bit too conservative with race setup. I was having some controller problems as well, but yeah, so I'll look back on the race and I'll run through the setup, which I probably would have used if I actually had some preparation and did some practice as well, but I had a lot of stuff going on, so I didn't have time, which was unfortunate. But if any of you guys didn't catch that, it's up on Apex Online Racing YouTube channel. Awesome race, as well as USA, which I also competed in. I'm in for the rest of the season, so I will be posting the last couple of races on the channel. I'm not 100% sure whether I will be actually racing Mexico this Sunday. I'm pretty sure I will be around for Brazil and Abu Dhabi. Yeah, Mexico is an unknown at the moment. Anyway, back to Japan. About probably 3.8, going the wrong way. So 3.8 wings, 50-60. I could bump that up to about 165 is what I run. Suspension geometry, again, just normal pretty much. 2.2 for suspension, 2.6 for the anti-roll bars, and 3.7 for ride height. Brakes 80% and 54 for myself for brake pressure. 23, 21.1, again light suspension geometry, bog standard, and 8 ballast. USA. 1.7 wings, 70-100 for differential. Suspension, front and rear camber as per normal all the way to the right. Front and rear toe, not quite all the way to the left. Very close. 0.006 and 0.23 on the bottom. 4.3 for suspension, 11.7 anti-roll bar, and 2.5 for the ride height. Now I run with 95 and 54 at Texas. 23, 21.1. Weight distribution, ballast, I run that at 8. Mexico. I run with 3.6 wings, 50 and 100 for the differential. Suspension geometry, bit different. 250 for front camber, 160 on rear, all the way to the right for front toe, 015, and 032 on the rear. Suspension we have 2.2, and anti-roll bars we have 9.4. Ride height we have 4 and 5. Brakes 155. I find that works well. Again, personal preference. 22.6, 20.3. Find it works well, mainly just with the hypers. And 8 ballast again. Brazil. Interesting racetrack this. Run with probably 2.7 if I... Yeah, that's what I run. I'm with 2.7 again. 50, 100. Find it works well. Suspension geometry again, a little bit kind of wishy-washy. 250 front camber. 190 on the rear. 015 on front toe and 023 on the rear of the car. Now, front suspension at 6, rear at 3. Front anti-roll bar is at 10, rear is at 5, and front ride height and rear are both at 4. Brakes, I find 156 works well. Tyres, again 23.0 and 21.1, and 8 ballast. Now to the final race of the season, Abu Dhabi. What I find is I run 1/8 wings here. I put the differential at 75, 100. Suspension geometry 260 on front camber and 120 on rear. 006 on front toe and 020 on the rear. Suspension, front suspension is set at 2, rear at 1. Front anti-roll bar at 2, rear at 2. Front ride height at 2 and the rear at 4. Brakes 158. Brake pressure, personal preference again as always. 22.2 and 20.3 for tyre pressures, and I actually run at 9 for ballast. There you go guys, that is a brief rundown of all my setups for the racetracks that I use. Keep in mind this has come out after the patch for the tyre temperatures, so if you actually drive and try and look after them, your tyres won't just blow up now, which I find very nice and very helpful. Anyway, been an amazing hour here. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe to the channel for more racing game content. As I've previously said before, there'll be little bits and pieces thrown in like GT Sport and maybe some project cars and some of this kind of stuff. There'll be more online racing as well, obviously. Anyway, this has been an amazing hour. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.